The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today.
Well, welcome to the journey. My name is Kevin Polkey, and I have a special guest with us today. Someone that I've known for a long time now. We're I think close to coming up on 10 years that I have known Ashley Phillips. And so, Ashley, welcome to the journey, and thank you for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Ashley, I know that you when we first met, you were we hired you or I hired you at for to be a counselor or social worker at KP Counseling, but that
Mhm.
isn't where your story really began. And so before we jump into all that, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do when you have an opportunity to have fun? What do you do for fun?
Well, I really love being outside. So summertime is my favorite time of the season. I'm outside usually hiking or going out with family and friends on a boat or hanging out in the pool. Um, I say in the winter time, my friend Sonia and I have been going for walks like a couple times a week, and that's something that I really enjoy. Really just spending time with family and friends and yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. I remember when you got married. That was it on the beach or were there or am I just it was on the beach?
Yep, it was. Yep, in January, which I thought I would never do an outdoor wedding and never in January because it would be cold, but it was a good reason to get away in the middle of the winter. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it was great.
And where was it in Florida?
Yep, we got married on St. Pete Beach, Florida in 2019.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And your
Yes.
husband's a great guy, so I
Uh-huh.
enjoyed to get to know him over time as well.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about where'd you grow up and tell us a little bit about your family and what was middle school, high school like for you?
Okay, yeah. So I grew up in Rockton, Illinois. So I went to the Rockton schools. I would say I'd graduate from Hononegah High School, but I didn't actually get to graduate from there, even though I was there through my senior year. Childhood was pretty good. I would say nothing major really happened during childhood until like my high school years. My parents ended up getting a divorce when I was like 16, 17 years old. And I remember if it was shortly before that or around that time that I had struggled with some of my own stuff. Um, I remember, going to school at Hononegah and I would get, some slips that I'd have to go down because it was more disciplinary for not being, skipping classes and stuff. And one day I got another slip that I assumed was a discipline related thing. And I ended up in Mr. Martinez, the school counselor at Hononegah. And I think that that was really like a helpful thing for me during that time. Um, and I was at Hononegah junior year. I moved out to North Carolina to live with my sister for probably about a semester out there, just to kind of have like I don't know, like kind of like a fresh start. That lasted about a semester. My uh, boyfriend, I would say at the time, came back because we were together like starting freshman year, and he got sent to a boarding school because of his behavioral issues at the time. And so when he completed the program, that was, 2, 3 years later. And when he came back, I ended up moving back from North Carolina. And we got back together. Things were great for a period of time. Um, but senior year, I ended up becoming pregnant. And during my pregnancy, I had hyperemesis, which was very extreme, nausea and vomiting. And after the first trimester, they finally sent me home with a PICC line. So I could, do IVs at home and injections at home on my own for pretty much a majority of the pregnancy. I think I was on that for like 6 months. So I didn't actually, during that time, which is why I said I didn't really graduate from Hananiga like I was supposed to. They tried making accommodations for me to do school from home. But I feel like, if I remember correctly, I feel like the teachers didn't really give me, I feel like I kind of was forgotten, right? Like they didn't give me this stuff until like right before graduation. And at that point, I was so sick and, close to being due, that I wasn't able to get those things done. So after, let's see, after that, there was a short period of time that I was just kind of working part-time places. Really was more kind of stay at home, with my son. And when my son was about a year old, I landed a job at Kane and Company, which is a local advertising agency here. I started off as their receptionist and ended up doing their bookkeeping, kind of basically became their like office manager. And so because of that, I was able to complete high school while I was there. And then I was trying to figure out plans for my life. And because I was doing their bookkeeping, I thought like accounting sounded like a good idea, kind of like a next practical step. Being a single mom, I was worried about finances and thought accounting would make sense. And then in 2010, I ended up, there was kind of a series of things that happened around then, but I ended up going on a missions trip to Haiti, with my church at the time. And while I was there, I remember coming back and just feeling like I need to do something different. And I remember people saying, some people that were supportive, that they were saying, don't do what's practical, do what you're passionate about. And I think during that time, I just kind of shifted gears, really trying to figure out where my path would lead to. I knew that I really enjoyed working with people. I've always had a passion and an interest, in working with people, but at the time didn't really think if I went into social work or psychology that I could make any money. And, I think that was kind of like a deciding factor that held me back initially. But then after I came back, I, ended up getting into Aurora University social work program once I figured out what I wanted to do. Loved the program, loved all my classes. They were different than when I was in my, bookkeeping classes at Rock Valley, something that I really looked forward to and enjoyed. And then I ended up graduating in 2014, with both my bachelor's and my master's. And then after that, I decided, well, I thought I could go into private practice on my own. And then shortly after, realized that you had to be a W-2 employee instead of a 1099, which is where our journey together started. Then I ended up at KP with you and spent 9 years there. And so I feel like during that time, I really had grown a lot as I think personally and professionally during that time. So, yeah, and now I just last year started my own business, called Becoming Free Counseling Services here in Rockford, Illinois. And just recently, well, now we have a team of, 4 additional therapists and being able to offer counseling services to individuals and families in the community. So,
Which is just an awesome, being able to, within 9 years, right, of really
mhm.
starting doing clinical work. And obviously during that time period, not only did you get you finished and you started practicing, but then you got your LCSW, which then
Mhm.
allowed you to independently bill insurance. And for the listeners that don't realize that, that's what we for social workers, we have to get our LCSW. For counselors, they have to be a licensed clinical professional counselor in Illinois. And then and marriage and family have to be an LMFT so that they can bill independently and not be underneath someone. And I know that in itself is sometimes a whole ordeal of studying for that test and passing that test and that process. So, um, well, uh, why don't you maybe tell us a little bit, because I don't know where to, I got a lot of different questions for you,
Mhm.
but tell us when you made the decision to name your agency Becoming Free Counseling. Tell us the story behind the name Becoming Free.
Yeah. Well, I had thought about it a lot during that time. And I feel like I was like personally in a transitional period of time in my life. Um, so my son's dad had died of an overdose in 2022. And I spent probably that first year really just kind of doing my own work and trying to, work through some of the things that came up from that. Um, and I know you know a little bit about the backstory regarding that. There has been, some days that were very difficult dealing with that. And I think with becoming free, I thought of my own journey of being able to become free from some of the things that I feel have either held me back in life, and or becoming free from, grief and trauma and any, other issues that I've had. And I've also spent really a lot of time thinking about my current clients that I had at the time and thinking of that question of like, what do you want to accomplish with coming in with therapy, and what's going to look different for you? I think those two questions really resonated when I was thinking about becoming free counseling services as a name of what do we offer to our clients in this, counseling world. And, whether it's a mental health or addiction or relationship issues, grief, trauma, um, or even just our own personal things that maybe keep us stuck in life. I wanted becoming free to mean something that would help other people become free from whatever it is so we can like increase their quality of life. And as also the becoming part of the name is also uh that I think becoming our authentic self and being the real version of ourselves instead of like what we think everybody else needs us to be or wants us to be. So that's kind of the backstory, a little bit about where the name came from and what we hope to accomplish here.
Sure, sure. And I think the idea of freedom, right? And
Mhm.
in and I think so many times metaphorically, the bars that we are imprisoned by are metaphorical, right? They're usually not physical bars. Now obviously there are individuals who, for different reasons are in a process of incarceration or whatever it may be, but for the most part, individuals who are not in that particular situation, anything that is imprisoning us, it's more that metaphor. And I think, and maybe you can speak a little bit more as you learned about and went through that journey. It's almost always stuff that imprisons us is stuff from our past
Mhm.
that kind of causes us to have limitations about our future and our present, right? And so
Mhm.
when you think of I know that it was a series, right? I mean, you left Kane and Company, and I know that was a huge risk and a huge jump at the time, being a single mom and making that leap, and then in the process, had a handful of different changes at KP, and then at toward the end or the last few years you were also a supervisor and helped us out, from that aspect of it. When you think of that journey professionally and then personally, and then getting remarried during that time period, and then going through, you hadn't been with Tyler's dad in a relationship for a long time period, and maybe
Mhm.
touch a little bit about how grief still comes up even if you weren't in an active relationship with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, so Tyler's dad was the one that I came back for when I lived in North Carolina, and so there's a long story there. But I think particularly with that is, the loss of the relationship in general. I don't think I was able to grieve that initially because I was in survival mode, especially being a single parent. But then having to deal with his mental health issues and addiction issues that at times were pretty brutal for all of us to have to deal with. There was always a part of me that I think I had hoped that things would be different for him, that he would get the help that he needed. Because especially being a therapist, I've seen so many people find freedom from that, and it's still an illness that needs to be managed, but it doesn't have to be the way that it was,
Mhm.
particularly with him. So, I think there was that part of the grief that came up, and also, um, I think time-wise for me, so I had my son Tyler when I was 18, and um his dad, Zach, lost his father due to suicide when he was 18. Well, we were not actually 19. And so the fact that Tyler was kind of around that age range again, and having just lost his dad, there was a lot of those fears that had come up, as far as, what's this going to look like for him, and is this going to be, a generational thing, the fear of something like that happening, as well to Tyler. Um, but yeah, I think I remember also part of that time was and I remember I think my therapist said something about, like, I wasn't able to really grieve and go through working through the trauma piece of that until he had passed, because there was still ongoing issues. So there wasn't really a resolution with any of it. It was just continuously, an issue there. So yeah, even though we hadn't had a relationship for years, it could still come up like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, I don't know if everyone takes in consideration or honors, you don't spend that much time with somebody, right?
Hmm.
If there wasn't qualities that you saw that were good. And
Hmm.
and so and yes, maybe we have a tendency in those situations where, maybe it's, 10% of the time, are those good qualities, and 90% of the time it's not so good. But
Hmm.
we still, those are still there. and
Yeah.
and like you said, if we don't go through the process of allowing ourselves to honor that, it lies within us, and it, comes up in other ways, comes up sideways. So
Mhm.
I'm grateful for you that you were able to acknowledge that, and had the
Mhm.
courage to work through that and work with that, and embrace that, so that you could be in a much different place. Because I
Mhm.
remember, more than once, there was times, where it was, not not very fun, a little scary,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
different times. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah, and I see, now being, as a therapist, I see so many stories that are similar in that sense, whether it's because of, their relationship with their parents and childhood traumas, or, just relationship stuff that comes up, that, people think of, and maybe part of this becoming free also, the name of that comes up with this too, is that I don't know if we're ever completely free from things that have happened, whether that's trauma or grief, because it comes up. Like you said, years later, how is it that, that you're still having these, reactions to things? But I think that's part of becoming free, is like learning how to manage those things and honoring when you do have those emotions that come up, of creating the space. And it doesn't mean that you're not making progress. It doesn't mean, that there's anything wrong with it. It's just being able to hold the space for it.
right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's a great point. It is, for us to accept and realize it,
Mhm.
we don't, unless something happens, right? We don't experience amnesia. We still have memory, we still have things coming up, but I think the freedom aspect is really about, what do we do with it when something comes up, versus being paralyzed by it, or thinking that we're regressing because something comes up,
Yeah.
or we find ourselves in that situation again. So I think it is really, what is our response to it,
Mm-hmm.
and then learning how to respond to it is really, I believe, personally as well as professionally, that's what we have to I have to learn how to do and continue to do, and as well as working with clients to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, when you think of, I know this, when I say this is going to be kind of a big question. So, but when you think of that 10 years ago, right? And you're at Kane and Company, if I'm, no, that wouldn't be 10 years ago. That would have been, yeah, about 10 years ago, right? That would have been
Mm-hmm.
20
Yeah.
2014.
Mm-hmm.
So 2013, 2014. And if you look back at Ashley and see, not only what you experienced and what you went through, but where you're at now, what would be some of the things that you would say going through, uh, going through with a teenage pregnancy, going through with some of the setbacks you had, in high school and those early young adult years, what would you say that you've learned about yourself that you wouldn't have learned if you wouldn't have gone through that?
Hmm. Well, I don't know. Yeah, that's a big question, as far as like the couple different things that can go with that. I do think, sometimes people that know me know that I have this, I say that it'll be fine. And I don't mean that to like minimize things or not take things seriously, but I think that because of the things that I've gone through, it's helped me realize that the next struggle that comes up, I know I'll be able to get through it. I think that that's one of the things of being able to have the confidence to be able to deal with whatever it is that life throws at me. That we'll be able to get through it somehow. Somehow it all works. I also have recognized that there's part of this independent side of me that's come out of that I sometimes have a hard time asking for help and recognizing that support is really good. I don't know how I would have gotten through some of the things that I did without the support of either family, friends, coworkers. Fortunately, I had, a really good support system that I still lean on now. So yeah, I don't know if there's, yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's what comes to mind initially. So
sure. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
you know, I, I think it's important for all of us to remember, especially in the midst of through something, is
Hmm.
that we there is no way to develop resilience without a setback. The
Yeah.
obstacles and the setbacks are what allows us to uh, develop and grow stronger. And so it's not that we go and ask for those setbacks, not that we go out and looking for those obstacles, but when life hands them to us, what we do with it and what we learn as a result of it is going to help us not only get through it, but then grow stronger, and it becomes part of the story.
Hmm.
And for the parents that are listening, or grandparents that are listening, or maybe even a young person who may find themselves in a situation where they have a setback, or appears to be a setback right now because of a pregnancy in high school, or in college. um, I think you're a great testimony of that. There's still more story to write.
Hmm.
And yeah, maybe it wasn't part of the plan, but that doesn't mean that with hard work and with persistence, you can still make all those dreams um, come true. And even in your case, find out what those dreams are by putting yourself out there, exposing yourself to something and going, I think I want to help people, and then pursue that, while you were working full time and taking care of Tyler, pursue that as well. So I'm very, I'm grateful that you applied at KP, back in 2015, and that I had the opportunity at that time to work with you, and now consider you a friend and colleague, as business owners in the community trying to make a difference. So Ashley, maybe tell us a little bit about becoming free counseling, and tell us about, what services you guys offer, and then and what counselors you have there, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. So, we offer, individual couples and, family counseling services. I guess with the team that we have now, we have a couple that see kids, so we really can provide services from ages 3 all the way on to older adulthood, which I think is great because if an individual is coming in, sometimes they know somebody else that needs counseling that, almost being able to work with the whole family system if needed. Because now that we have a team of people and it's not just me, I can refer to somebody else and still be able to help the family unit as a whole. We have, I'm trying to think. So Nikki Myers, she's an LCPC. She has training, she's certified in EMDR, which is a specific trauma related treatment. So she can work with those issues. She also does Reiki and hypnotherapy, which are unique things that I'm still learning about from her. Let's see, Lindsay Posey is also a therapist on staff. She's an LCSW, and she does pretty much sees a wide variety of issues, but I know that she has some background in like chronic illness and being able to work through some of those issues. And then Ashley Kirsten, she's an LSW, being supervised by me as well as Kaylee Bowler. Both of those, are under my supervision at this time. And they are seeing pretty much, Kaylee sees ages like 5 and up, and Ashley sees her primary population she wants to work with are teens and young adults. But they're open to seeing whoever, comes in as well. And it's been a really part of this journey. It's really been great that I ended up at KP and had the opportunity as the clinical lead, because that's an area that I'm really passionate about, is being able to, build into the next generation of therapists and like helping guide them as well. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Well, and I know that, I mean, you did a wonderful job being a clinical lead. For the listeners, that's a clinical supervisor, where primary responsibilities are helping to mentor, not only how to do adequate notes and from a clinical perspective, but also then mentoring individuals in developing therapeutic tools in session and out of session, and different techniques. And I know that a extremely important piece of what I wanted to do at KP, was developing therapists and developing therapists within the community, for all those reasons, that somebody that poured into me, someone saw something within me when I was early on in the career. Actually, here is an interesting thing, timing wise, is that today, Kevin Anderson, his retirement party is today at KP, and Kevin in 1991 is the one who hired me as a counselor. When, I mean, previously, before that, I was a juvenile correction officer and had no idea as a counselor. I was a bodybuilder, uh, more of a competitive athlete, but I knew that I wanted to go in that direction, and he took a chance on me. And it's interesting watching full circle now, with him retiring, at
Yeah.
that would have been 34 years ago. So that was a while ago. So,
Uh-huh.
but yes, I think that is extremely, I think beneficial for therapists to have someone as experienced as yourself is, and willing to to feed into them, for them to grow and be, like you said, be that next generation. So
Mhm.
right now, if someone called and we're looking for, or went to the website, what would they be able to get in within a week or so, within for appointment, or how what's the
Yeah.
availability?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone on our team pretty much has openings and availability right now. So that's nice. If anyone's looking for counseling services, they'd be able to get in fairly quickly. They can either, all of our contact information is on our website, which is becomingfreecounseling.com. But there's also a way that they can request appointments through there, or they can call or email us as well if they were looking to get started.
Well, Ashley, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've really appreciated watching your journey as you've grown, not only as a therapist, but as a person. And I know that, with where your life is at now, you know, it is just like you said, it is living within that freedom and embracing life. And so I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you do for our community.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kevin, for having me on here.
No problem.
Yeah.
For anyone that was listening and either wanted to reach out to Ashley to learn more about her story, or becoming a client or learning more about becoming free counseling, definitely check out becomingfreecounseling.com on her website, and all her contact information is there. Again, as always, thank you for being here, and I look forward to being with you next week.